the top 10. The room to be in the conversation.
Yo, what's poppin', y'all? It is your boy, it's Guard E3, and thank the Lord, I'm so happy. Our co-host is back. Ladies and gentlemen, I said it before, I'll say it again, the greatest co-host of all time, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mo Betta. Mo, how you doing?
I'm just glad to be back. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in to the N1 podcast tonight with Brett and I. We're just going to talk some hoops, and I'm just glad to be back and ready to cook.
Oh, absolutely. And there's definitely a lot to talk about. But you know what? You know how we start this, Mo? It's time for our underrated players of the week. So why don't we start with you, Mo? Do you got a player for this week?
I actually think my underrated player of this week is going to be weird to say this. I'm going to go with Caitlin Clark. I think Caitlin Clark, for me, she's my underrated player of the week. I understand all the hype that comes with her. And I do understand with the hype, you're going to have people who by default will dislike her or think she's overrated. But we all know, obviously, what she's brought to the WNBA in terms of viewership, attention, money. So we can't really debate her value. But I think she's underrated. In college, we thought of her, Brett, as a scorer. And she still is a scorer. But I think we're learning more and more. She's a terrific playmaker. She's a natural playmaker. Maybe her WNBA spirit or her lane going forward, she'll be less like a Kobe and maybe more like a Chris Paul. She's a terrific playmaker. When she creates for her teammates, I think she is a natural playmaker when she's in attack mode. And I just think she's underrated in that aspect of her game. So I think going forward, I'm not going to look at her as a two guard or a point guard. I'm going to look at her as a basketball player who's a terrific facilitator.
When I watch her, I know a lot of people make the Curry comparisons, and that's fair. But her game was almost to me more resemblant of like a new age. If we're making an NBA comparison, I think it's closer to Steve Nash than Curry. It's like if Steve Nash had more range.
Yeah, I like that one too.
Because Curry's a good playmaker. He's a great playmaker, but the way she plays, the way she just handles the ball, and the way she's making all these deliveries, different passing angles, those aren't plays that I necessarily associate with Curry. Those are more plays that I associate with someone like Steve Nash. So I agree. I think she's absolutely phenomenal. And in a sense that I do think that she can be underrated. That's very fair. I always think the concept of being overrated or underrated always depends on the person. So, yeah, no, she's been absolutely phenomenal, and she's living up to the hype.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the WNBA because there's so many tremendous players in the WNBA. And so by no means am I saying she's the best player. I'm simply saying just judging her on her skill set, I think going forward, she's going to be a terrific, if I had to label her, a combo guard who can give you a little bit of everything.
Yeah, to say that's fair. I wanted to show some love to a guy who is a very talented player. He arguably was the best in franchise history until a guy named Chris Paul came along to this franchise. We're talking about Elton Brand, Clippers legend. He was arguably the best Clipper before CP3 came along. Great post player, some great rim protection. Overall, I wanted to give him a shout out because I was looking at different like underrated players and different players to possibly do some more deep dives into. And I'm just sitting here like, he's a lot better than I thought he was. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to give him the shout out. Shout out Elton Brand for being this week's underrated player of the week for me.
Terrific double guy, rock solid, very fundamentally sound in the post, good footwork, nice touch from 16 feet in, and just a really good basketball player. Like I look at Elton Brand, and he's kind of Zach Randolph without the ruggedness. Like he's more. I don't want to call him finesse, but he doesn't bring that bang that Zach Randolph brought to your chest. But he was a terrific player when he was with the Clippers throughout his career until injuries kind of slowed him down. So yeah, I think Elton Brand is one of those really good players, Brett, that gets lost in time.
Yeah, absolutely. We, I was uh I was watching Jeff Teague earlier talk about one of my other favorite players, and I was watching highlights too. I thought about talking about Josh Smith here as well.
Josh Smith.
He is so good. If he just had a higher basketball IQ, because a lot of people don't realize about Josh Smith is that man had a lot of the same intangibles as like he had like LeBron level athleticism. He had that vert. He had that acceleration. He had a great passing bag, but man, that his basketball IQ left a lot to be desired, and it's unfortunate. He could have been so good.
He could have been really good if he would have been content to play within himself. Josh Smith wanted to be a scorer, and he's not a natural scorer. He didn't shoot well enough to be a scorer. He could handle the ball, but he didn't handle the ball well enough to where he could break people down off the dribble consistently. That was not a strength of his. His athleticism, his ability to play guard multiple positions at a high level when he's locked in, he could have made his niche right there had he bought into that. He very well easily could have been like a 6 or 7-time All NBA defender, maybe even won a DPOY once or twice. He had that kind of potential, but to your point, we don't put it out there a lot. But look, Josh Smith, if you're ranking, and maybe that'll be a new thing that analytics guys do, put it out there. If you're ranking basketball IQ, his was not very high.
Yeah, I think my favorite part of the podcast was he would talk about what Josh Smith would do because he admitted he's like, yeah, he liked to shoot too many threes, and what he would do is he'd stand right next to the guy with the ball, so his guy would go help, so they'd have to pass it to him so he could shoot a three. I'm like, come on, Josh.
Hey, I just remember that Atlanta team with Josh Smith, Joe Johnson, and Al Horford, and had he bought into his role, they could have been so much better. Had he accepted the fact that Joe was the guy and Al Horford was Mr. Steady. Like you knew what you were going to get from Al Horford night in and night out. And Josh could have been the second star, actually, had he been a more consistent player. But I just think he wanted to be more than what he was. And that hurt them in the bigger picture. Like that team's claim to fame is that they took the championship Celtics team to a 7-game series in the first round. It was a great series.
Yeah, that's a series they absolutely could have won. That was a lot of fun to watch.
It was. I thought that was that Hawks team's coming out party. Little did I know that was going to actually be their peak.
Ooh, yeah. And we got some great topics for y'all tonight, but I didn't get to ask you last week, Mo. I want to ask you this week. This will be our puppy prospect segment. We just had Summer League conclude, Mo. Who impressed you during Summer League? It could be your team or any team or.
I really watched a lot of the Lakers Summer League, and I thought everything that people talked about with Connect, I saw it. And I still think that he's going to continue to elevate. I know a lot of people are expecting a lot of things from him. I just think that over time, I believe he's going to become part of the regular rotation and be impactful. And look, as far as Bronny goes, like I said, I treat him like I treat any rookie. I think that he had a slow start to Summer League, but I thought he finished strong. And I think you can see the potential where if he can get some consistency in what he does offensively, I don't see why he doesn't have an opportunity along with Connect that they might actually break into the rotation. I'm not saying as a full-time starter. I'm not even saying a guy that plays 20 minutes a game, but because he's a smaller, quicker guard, the Lakers struggle with guys like you already know Trae Young, little smaller, quicker guards. What if Trae Young is just going off and killing them? I think Bronny can come in with his quickness and he's physically stronger than Trae Young already, and I think he can slow him down a little bit. I think there's a role for Bronny going forward, and so I look to me. Stop comparing him to his father and just judge him on what he can be as an individual talent. I think Bronny's going to be in the rotation, if not late this season, somewhere next season. But I think he is a legitimate NBA player.
I think at 55 is everybody was talking about if he. I think if his last name wasn't James, everybody would be talking about how much of a steal he was at 55. Because let's remember, before the whole heart issue, he was ranked as a top 20 prospect. They had him mocked at 17, ironically, which would have been the
Right.
Lakers' first round pick. So
Right.
it's something that it's unfortunate. He had the heart issues, and then he came back rusty, and then he started summer league rusty, and that's fine. But the thing with Bronny is, you watch him, and he has all the right instincts. Like he's cutting to open spots, he's making himself available, and the shot wasn't falling, but it doesn't look like there's anything wrong with his jumper. So
no, I'm
I
with
thought
you.
that was an absolutely great pick in all reality. And like I said, if his last name wasn't James and he wasn't the son of LeBron, this would have been a universally praised pick at 55.
Right, because you would have been talking about this 55th pick. Like this guy was drafted 55th, and he's actually out playing or playing as well as so many guys drafted ahead of him. Look, I don't get the heat that he's getting from people, because I'm sure you've noticed it. I've noticed it. Look at the number one pick in the draft, the kid for the Wizards, Sar. He's not been good. He's not been good at all. And I'm not one of those kind of people. Well, he wasn't good in summer league, so he's a bust. No, I don't believe that at all. But I think that Sar has to adjust to the quickness of the NBA game and the physicality that guys his size and length have. And that's a big adjustment coming from where he came from.
Yeah, Sar hasn't looked great offensively at all. I will say his defense has been perfectly adequate, and I think that'll translate just fine. But yeah, even I've mentioned it on here. Coming into the draft, I've questioned what his offensive game would look like coming into the NBA, and it is bad. And that's almost why I was questioning why he wouldn't work out for the Hawks too. Because let's be real, Trae Young has its faults, but the one thing that he could do is take all the offensive load away from Sar and made the offensive game easier for him.
Agreed. Agreed.
So to me, refusing to work out for him just so you can go play with the pool party and Kyle Kuzma, questionable choice, but maybe he wants to go develop there more with more touches. So I hope it works out for him.
I do too. And it's not the worst choice, right? Because if you don't want the pressure, the immediate pressure, playing for the Wizards, I don't care what number pick you are, you're not playing for a winner. You're still playing for a lottery team. And maybe he wants to be right now, he wants to be a big fish in a small pond, without as much pressure on him to have an immediate impact. Playing with Kuzma, playing with Jordan Poole, I can tell you right now, that's about 40 shots a game between the two of them. So there's not going to be a lot of shots for him to take.
Well, and then when they maybe if they win the Cooper Flag sweepstakes next year, that's even less shots for them.
Oh, well, look, and that's the funny thing. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think Cooper Flag, unlike Sar, I think he's NBA ready. I'm not saying star right away, but I think he can play immediately and be impactful in a lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to shout out my guy as well. Shout out to AJ Johnson. That was a pick that got clowned a lot, and even I was unsure about. I'm not going to sit here and say I was all for it the
Play
entire
well.
time. But if you watch him, like his jumper needs some work, and he's going to have to work on his defense. But he's got some burst and insane speed that it's just something that you can't teach. He has a speed and burst that almost reminds me of a young Maxey, or even at times, if he goes in a straight line, he's right up there with quicker guys like Maxey and Fox. Like he has that speed and burst that you just can't teach. So if he's able to harness that into some consistent offense, I think we may have just snagged our, backup point guard of the future for a couple of years, and then maybe our future point guard whenever either Dame becomes unplayable or he ends up leaving in a couple of years. So I wanted to give him a shout out because he, that pick was clown, but I thought he looked actually really fun during summer league, and he looked really good. And I'm hoping he gets some minutes. I want to see him against actual competition, and
I think you will. Brett, look, I remember we talked about the draft like right afterwards, and you weren't down on him, but you weren't overly enthused. And look, I saw what I saw of him, looking at his highlights from college, and the first thing I noticed is what you pointed out. I didn't realize he was that quick. I didn't realize he had that kind of burst. He brings to Milwaukee a burst and quickness, even some athleticism that they lack. I know people look at him and go, well, he's somebody that's going to help us down the road. I think he's the kind of kid that's a gym rat. And if he's a gym rat like I think he is, I think he's going to help you guys at some point in this season. Maybe not the first half of the season, but I think he's going to earn some playing time and be impactful in the second half of the season.
I was looking at that too. I think he will play a little bit this season. Dame's always good to miss a little bit of time, and actually, DeLon Wright normally misses 15 games or so throughout the season. So,
right.
Yeah, I could absolutely see a situation where he's forced into playing time early, and I think he'll surprise a lot of people. Now, speaking of, let's switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about some WNBA. We just had the All-Star game, Team USA versus Team WNBA, and it was, I'm not going to lie, it was a lot of fun to watch. Mo, what was your thoughts on it? I thought it was a great watch.
I came in with an open mind, and the first thing I thought is, man, I hope that Team USA is able to be competitive. Because if you look at just name recognition, and they have talent on Team USA, but I thought, man, WNBA goes on a run, and they're going to be up 15 or 20, and that'll be it. And Team USA came out, and they weren't messing around. And they smacked them in the mouth, and they woke them up. And it was it was a terrific game. I don't like in the aftermath how basically so many different people and pundits are saying, well, the WNBA, they were kind of coasting. They weren't really playing hard. If you watch the game that I played, or the game that I watched, excuse me, they were playing hard. It was a competitive game, and they got outplayed. And there were a couple of players on the USA team that I thought, wow, they look like the best players on the floor for the entire game. Like, I was really impressed, enjoyed it, loved it. And look, if you're the WNBA team, you have to come away feeling great about yourself. If you're Team USA, it's a disappointing loss, but it's also one of those losses that you can learn from, right? Because you're playing against your own people before you launch your way into the Olympics. So I just thought, I didn't like that people were trying to play it off as if the WNBA or the Team USA gave a half-hearted effort when, no, they played hard. Maybe they got up to a slow start, but they played hard. They just outplayed in a great game.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that a lot of people got to remember with Team USA is they're not going to play a team most likely that's as good as Team WNBA was.
Agreed.
Like the talent level is going to be a step above playing Team WNBA, so I think Team USA will be fine. And what you just said, so I agree with that. And if it's just people on Twitter saying Team USA wasn't trying, I'd have just completely overlooked it. But when it's Cheryl Reeves saying we didn't come out and really compete after the game, congratulations. You are my do better with Mo Better moment of the week. I call this out all the time, the hypocrisy with Doc Rivers, and now I have to do it here. Because you did. Because I watched you in the second quarter when you're pressing Caitlin Clark 94 feet. I think the issue is she just doesn't want to admit they lost. Sometimes you just got to admit the better team won. We tried, we got our butt kicked. Because the game plan, first off, it didn't make any sense. They pressed Caitlin Clark to take away her scoring when in all reality, she's such an elite playmaker that just played right into her hands. And then obviously, just admit it, you couldn't cover Arike. Ogunbowale, she went crazy in that third quarter. And once they pushed the lead up to 11, it never really dropped down below that. It got as high as 20. So this bothered me a lot because it came who it came from. Don't say you didn't compete. Just admit, hey, we tried, but we got our butts kicked. And I think the other issue with the Team USA in all reality is Team WNBA was just a lot younger. And you saw that in the second half. When Team USA, that's when they got a lot of these points in the paint. That's when they were just hustling them down the court, getting these easy baskets, getting wide open threes because Team WNBA looked like they were Team USA just looked way too tired to close out.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different factors, but for Cheryl Reeves to come out and say, yeah, we didn't like really, really compete. Come on, do better. Learn from
Agreed.
it and take accountability for what happened.
Agreed 100%. It's funny because I guess my do better is a tie-in to this game. My do better is I want the NBA to take a cue for the WNBA. I want to see a competitive all-star game this coming season. I don't want to see a layup line. I don't want to see lobs. I don't want to see guys getting out of guys' way and allowing them to score. I want to see a competitive game. And if that means if we select the Eastern Conference All-Stars, the Western Conference All-Stars, but those All-Stars are making business decisions or they want to make business decisions. Maybe they don't want to compete. If they want to just say, I've been honored as being selected to the All-Star game, but I don't really want to compete, then let's get some guys in there who didn't make it or just missed it and let them compete. I want them to take their cues from what we saw in the WNBA and get back to when the All-Star game was something worth watching. Do better.
Even if it was like I'll say, even if it's not like the big name stars, but at this point, I'd rather watch a team with like guys that just want to hoop. Like at this point, I don't need to watch like Luca throw up layups for 48 minutes. Give me Cam Thomas trying to break people down off the dribble and hit tough step backs. Like give me an actual basketball game.
I'm looking for competitors. I love that you brought up Cam Thomas. And this guy's a bigger name, obviously, but put somebody like Desmond Bain in there if he don't make it all right. I want to see Desmond Bain. I want to see Jaren Jackson. I want to see some of the younger guys who got a lot of dog in them and they want to compete. I understand if you're an established star, especially if you've been in the league 10 or more years, it doesn't mean as much to you. If it doesn't mean as much to you, no shade. Just step aside and let these younger guys compete.
Absolutely. And Team USA, we might as well talk about it. The men's. A lot of people are surprised. They thought that this Team USA would just come in and blow everybody out by 50 and it'd just be a cakewalk. And I think people are starting to realize that this is not 1992.
It is not.
This ain't 2008. The world is not that far behind anymore. In the past, it was maybe a handful of teams could compete with the USA. In the past, like 04, 08, it was Spain. And of course, I think it was Argentina who we lost to in 04 with Manu Ginobili. Well, guess what? Now we got a lot of teams that are competitive. South Sudan, we beat them by 1 point. And then we went ahead and we only beat Germany by 4. So I think people are starting to notice how competitive the world has gotten around us when it comes to the game of basketball.
I agree, but I would also add that talent-wise, I still think there's a significant separation. But when it comes to teamwork and chemistry and being cohesive, I think that's where a lot of the European teams have a clear edge because they have played together as a unit for years. And every Team USA game I've watched, Brett, predominantly you can tell they have no sets. And right now, they're literally just kind of feeling their way through. I think once they get a couple sets in them, and especially on defense, because when you watch how the European teams plays, there's a lot of picks, there's a lot of back cuts, there's a lot of back picks. Like there's a constant movement of bodies in the ball, and I just think that Team USA has to adjust to that. I don't think we can just show up now and just win. I still think we have a talent advantage, but I think the other teams are good enough that if Team USA just shows up and they're not on their A game, they could very well lose. I don't expect them to go undefeated in the Olympics. I expect them to win the gold, but I think there'll be at least one team that will challenge and beat them once in a close game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's something I've noticed too. And I'm not sure if that's maybe Steve Kerr wants to try to run some sets and the players just aren't going for it. Because randomly you'll see them bust out a set and it'll work to perfection. You've seen a handful of times where like they'll run screens and just run plays for Steph. LeBron set a couple screens for him, and it's great. It works out awesome, but it's just so inconsistent on when they do it. Half the time, it's just all right. Let's just give it to LeBron, and we're gonna play drive and dish basketball.
Right. It looks. No, I'm with you. Too many times, it looks like a Laker game where it's just him driving and attacking or kicking to somebody, and everybody else is just standing around watching him. And you've got way too much talent on that team for everybody to just be standing around watching.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to guard read and react basketball a lot of the time than trying to actually guard set plays because those set plays can have so many different wrinkles. It's actually
Agreed.
something that Kobe talked about, how the game is turned to read and react basketball and away from set plays. And it's funny now because when you see teams that run a lot of set plays, it works very well.
Australia Australia gave Team USA a run for their money because they were excellent at back picks. I mean, I don't know how many times that they went back door on Team USA. It looked like the same play being ran over and over again, but it took Team USA forever to adjust to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, not everybody has been impressed with the world. We have a good buddy that we've talked about way too much on this show. We've mentioned him a handful of times because he says so many stupid things, but I think he's one upped himself. Mo, what do you think about? Let's cut to the chase. What do you think about the Gilbert Arenas comments? I think we've all heard him at this point.
So I think the thing about Gil is that I think most people do know he's actually a really smart guy, really sharp. He actually knows the game of basketball, but he says some things sometimes, and you're like, why'd he go there? Because it was a mish of xenophobic, maybe a little racism, a little stereotypical. It was everything that was bad he threw out there, and it was unnecessary. It literally could have been just as simple as South Sudan surprised Team USA and gave them a run for their money, and you could stop right there, full stop. That doesn't mean if they played again, they would give Team USA a run for their money. It doesn't. But it does mean that, again, you pointed out, a lot of these European countries have made huge strides in their ability to compete with the United States. And rather than denigrate them, just give them credit for what they did. Like, they lost the game, but they played so well. I would have thought, if anything, you would have big up them and said, these guys came to play. They pushed them. Like, they had this huge lead. Team USA comes back, runs them down, takes the lead, and you think, that's it, game over. And that's not what happened. So South Sudan responded, got back into the game, took the lead. Like, it was a terrific basketball game. And I would rather people talk about how great a game it was and how Team USA managed to win, even though they didn't play their best, rather than to denigrate Team USA and, more importantly, denigrate their opponent. What Gil said to me was out of pocket. But like I said, he's a smart guy, but saying stuff out of pocket, that's not new to him.
And I think that's what makes me so mad about him, right? It's because I know how smart he is. I know he knows what he's talking about. I've heard him say some really smart things. But the issue is he cares more about that clickbait engagement than talking about the sport half the time, it seems. Because when he decides to go full basketball IQ and just talk, he's a very smart guy.
100%.
But then just too often he's like, well, here's some clickbait for you. And it's just the most out of pocket thing. So I just hope Gilbert learns from this one and he just does better in the future.
Agreed. Look, like you said, smart guy. knows the game, but I think in a lot of ways, clickbait is kind of where he draws people. Even though he has a strong following, he draws in new followers with the clickbait. Right? It ends up being a topic of conversation, and so that draws people in. He's surrounded by guys that say stuff like that. When you think of Kenyon Martin, I was gonna say I can't remember his name right now. He used to play for North Carolina.
Rashad McCants.
There you go. He says more out of pocket stuff than Gil, but I think he knows he's saying stuff out of pocket. Like, look, if he didn't say anything out of pocket, we wouldn't know who he was. Nobody would.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating part too. Is I want people to remember Gil as who he was, the guy who revitalized the Wizards franchise after all those years of mediocrity. Outside of the 3 years that Michael Jordan stopped in for a quick piss. I want him to be remembered for that. But when he does this, and it's just clickbait after clickbait, now you're going to get a younger generation that they don't know Gilbert for being ahead of his time with the deep threes and this revolutionary player out of Washington. They're just going to know him as the guy who says stupid stuff online. So I just hope that, people remember Gilbert for who he was and not who he's portraying himself to be.
I'm with that. I like that.
So I got a fun game, Mo. We're going to play a game. It's called Playoffs, Play-In, or Lottery. I got two divisions here for us today, and we're going to simply pick if they're going to be a playoff team this year, a play-in team, or a lottery team. So we'll start with the Southwest Division. And I think this one starts off pretty easy. So do you think Dallas will be a playoff, play-in, or lottery team? Oh, you're muted.
I think the Mavericks are not just a playoff team; they're a championship contender. So yeah, definitely a playoff team.
Yeah, I agree. We don't think we need to go into too much detail on that one. They made the finals last year. I think they'll make an equally deep run this year. They made some great offseason moves. Now, this next one is so interesting to me. The New Orleans Pelicans. Playoff, play-in, or are they a lottery team?
I'm going to go out of pocket. I think they're a play-in team, and they're a play-in team mostly because of the team that's at number 4.
Oh,
they're going to be a play-in team because of them. That team. I mean, I know we haven't gotten to Houston yet, but we'll get to Houston, then we'll go. But yeah, I think the it's weird because the Pelicans could actually be better, but I think they're going to be a play-in team.
No, I agree. I think a lot of teams got better, and the Pelicans they got DeJounte, which helps. But once again, this is a team that's going to rely on can Zion Williamson stay healthy.
That's important.
And history shows us he can. He'll play well enough to get him into a spot where they comfortably make the play-in, and then he just won't be there for the actual play-in. So I think that's a perfect spot for him for play-in. Now, Houston Rockets. I think this is an interesting one next year. Playoff, play-in, or lottery.
This is the most complicated one in this division because obviously they made strides late in the season, finished 500. Young, talented team. I'm going to say they're a play-in team. I don't think this division it's solid, but I don't think they're going to have two teams that are just out and out in the playoffs, or 3 teams. I think they'll have 2 teams, but not 3 teams.
That's fair. I think with the Rockets, I'm going to go play-in team next year, but not this year.
Okay.
I think they're close. I think they'll do it again where they'll have a really good year, and I think that they'll be in the play-in race like all the way up until the end. Like you're going to see them in this race up until the last game, but I think they'll fall just short, and that'll be their motivator to get in next year. Now, the next one, we can both agree on this one because you already said it. The Memphis Grizzlies, playoff, play-in, or lottery?
Oh, I think they're playoffs. I mean, think about this. It's almost like they had a great draft. You're getting back John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane, a healthy Marcus Smart, and you just drafted Zach Edey. and they did a lot of other good things in the offseason. I think this team is going to be fighting with the Mavericks for the top of the division.
Say we got to remember before the Steven Adams injury and the whole jaw thing started that this team was one of the top 3 teams in the West. So I completely agree. I think this is a playoff team. And another fun one. This division is going to be real tough next year because another up and coming team, the San Antonio Spurs, playoffs, play in, or lottery.
I think in a way, I kind of feel about the Spurs the way you feel about the Rockets. I think they're going to be improved. Obviously, they've got better leadership just on the fact that you brought Chris Paul in. Wemby's going to be a year better. Some of those other young pieces they just brought in around him will be a year better. I think the Spurs, they won 22 games this past season. I think they're in the upper 30s. I think they're gonna probably just fall out of the play-in, but I think they're going to be much improved and be very competitive.
That's where I'm at with them too. I think the Spurs are also going to be challenging for the play-in next year, and I think they will be a play-in team next year. I think next year it's a very real opportunity between the playoffs and play-in. We could see over half this division in an important game some way or another next year.
Oh yeah.
So Wemby, I think he's going to be. The way I think about it is I think Wemby is ready to lead a team to the play, and I just don't think the supporting cast around him is quite ready yet.
Not
With
yet.
that next year of experience, like you said, everybody will be ready, and we'll finally get to see you play in Wemby. And we'll do one more division. And it just so happens to be the Pacific. And this one is tough. So we'll start. It's tough because I want to see every single one of these teams miss the playoffs just because I don't really like the way any of them are formatted. But
it's kind of weird because, right? Well, go ahead. Let's go with the Clippers first. But yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? Are the Clippers a playoff play-in or are they a lottery team?
I think they're a play-in team. You still have Kawhi, you still have Harden, Norman Powell's there. They've brought back Nicholas Batum, a great glue guy. Now, if the real question is the same question we've been asking the last 5 or 6 years, if Kawhi is going to play 60 or more games like he did last year, then you're probably going to have a pretty good record. The only question is, after those 60 plus games, is he going to be healthy going into the playoffs? But I'm going to say they're a play-in team because I don't think you can lose a Paul George, lose some of the other pieces they did, and be better than you were last year.
No, that's where I have them this year. I think they're going to be a good play-in team. They might be the top-seeded play-in team, although losing Paul George it's way too much for a team to overcome, and I don't think that the Clippers are going to be able to do just that. They'll still make the playoffs, but I think it'll be through the play-in.
Okay, I got you.
This team, the Phoenix Suns. There's a team. This team I was like haven't been sold on in like 3 years, but playoffs, play-in, or lottery.
The funny thing is, everybody can't be a play-in team. And if Phoenix is a lottery team, the funny part is I don't even think they'd have their pick. They can't afford to be a lottery team. I'm going to say they made the playoffs last year. I think they're good enough to make the playoffs again. I don't think they're built to go on a deep run, but I think they make the playoffs again.
No, that's fair, and I'm going to put them in the play-in. I don't think that they're the one that win the division, and that's the only reason I'm putting somebody from this division in the playoffs. Is somebody has to win the division at some point. This whole division is just old and aging, and that's why I'm so not with it.
The interesting thing is about this division, though. I think it's even. You know what I mean? Like if you go on name recognition, you're gonna say the Suns or the Lakers, maybe even the Warriors. But I can make a case that the trio of DeMar DeRozan, Sabonis, Fox, and I think that trio alone makes Sacramento maybe more scary on the offensive end. I'm not going to skip this. Let's not skip a step. I know the next team is the Lakers. Let's do the Lakers.
All right, Mo, what's your team going to be? Playoffs, play in, or lottery?
I think we make the playoffs this year. I don't think we make the play. I think we out and out make the playoffs.
That's okay. I got you. I'm trying to think. I forgot if I had a team from.
I think because we're going to take advantage of the fact that the Clippers are lesser. I don't think the Suns are world beaters. And even though Sacramento added scoring, what they don't do is they don't guard anybody. They don't stop anybody.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just gonna say I was debating between the Lakers and Kings, who I want to pick for the winner of this division and make the playoffs. And I think the Lakers are the best bet because I'm not sold on the Kings yet. I'm just not sold on their defense. I think their offense is going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
It'll be very interesting to see their closing lineup. Because I think they could have a closing lineup with Fox, Monk, DeRozan, Sabonis, and what's the young man that shoots the threes? I can't remember his name right
Keegan
now.
Murray?
Yes, Keegan Murray. Like that could be their closing lineup. That's an interesting closing lineup. It just for me with the Kings, they just have to be able to amp it up a little bit more defensively and on offense. Just try to get back to where they were. Actually, be better, even better than what they were a couple of years ago. So the weird thing is, I think the Kings, they should be favored to win the division. I just don't know if they're gonna live up to the expectations, but I don't. We both agree the Clippers aren't going to win the division. We don't think the Suns are going to win the division. It literally comes down to the Kings and Lakers, and I think the Kings end up with a better record, and the Lakers are second in the division.
I can't have everybody in my play-in. I agree with that, so I'm gonna do something here. I'm gonna knock the Clippers out of the play-in. They're just not making the playoffs this year.
They might not, right?
I'm just not sold on Kawhi Leonard's knee the more I think about it. The fact that he was asking to load manage during a Team USA and the Olympics is kind of concerning to me. Like that just tells me that his knee is not right at all. So you know what? I'm going to knock the Clippers down. They're not making the playoffs this year. Lakers, I'll put as the division winners.
Kings too?
Kings, they're the ones that I'm going to replace with the Clippers in the play-in.
Okay, I got you. Okay, bet.
So
that means that the Golden State is literally pulling up the rear?
Yep.
I'm assuming we're both going to agree that Golden State probably is not going to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think two teams don't make the playoffs from this division. It's going to be the Clippers, who I think are going to be the second worst team in the division, and I think the Warriors. I don't think the Warriors have done enough to build around Steph. A lot of people are saying that, this is the best Andrew Wiggins we've seen in years, but I've heard that. I hear that out of every training camp. I've heard about the best Ben Simmons I've seen. I'm supposed to be seeing this year again for the fifth year in a row. Apparently, Jonathan Kuminga is supposed to make the superstar jump that he was supposed to do last year, too. Moses Moody's making a jump.
Everybody's making a jump.
Right, and the reality is not everybody's going to make that jump. I can't tell if Wiggins is going to return to 2021 form, but he would
hope he does.
I hope so too, but I think that's the level he would have to come back to in order to make this Warriors team competitive. And I think he won't be 2021 or 2022, but he won't be as bad as last year. I think he'll be somewhere in between, but I don't think that's good enough. So,
and let me ask you this. Let me ask you this, Brett. If the Warriors, let's say they're at the bottom of the division, but record-wise, let's say they're, I don't know, 5 games out of 500, 5 games under 500 at the trade deadline. Because everything we're projecting right now, we're basing it off of their current roster construction, right? Who they are right now. Do you think there's a move that Golden State can make before the trade deadline that could turn their season around if they're slightly under 500?
I think there's moves that can make them more interesting. I think the most notable one is the one that's the most talked about. I think you call up Utah and maybe see if Lauri Markkanen's available for a reasonable price. Do I think that puts them into championship contention? No, I don't think that move exists, but I think there's moves to get him into being a solid play-in or playoff contender. But like I think Lauri Markkanen would. But if we're asking about them like jumping above anything above solid playoff team, I don't think that move's going to be available for them.
No, I agree. I feel like even though their situation seems different, I think the Warriors and Clippers are kind of in similar situations. These are aging teams. The only difference is the Warriors are an aging championship team, and the Clippers are an aging, let's call it, underachieving team. And I think if the Clippers are in the same situation, Steve Ballmer's got to go to his GM and go, we got to make a tough decision. Like if Kawhi's healthy, but we're not, our record is bad, but he's still playing at an all NBA level, maybe he has value somewhere else where we can get back some picks or something, because you're going into that new stadium this year. And if you're going to be a bad team, what can you sell your season ticket holders on? You can always sell your season ticket holders, Brett. And you notice you can sell them on hope if you have draft picks. If the Clippers are bad and Kawhi is still healthy or Harden's playing, whatever the case may be, and they can move them for assets or move him for assets, I think you make that move.
Yeah, I do too. I think if you're the Clippers, if things go south this year, blow it up. Don't try to make any short-sighted trades to try to win try to fix everything this year.
Right.
Learn from yourselves. That's how you ended up trading the pick that became Kyrie Irving for Baron Davis. Like, don't do that again.
That's a great point. Or the picks that you got Paul George, but you ended up trading SGA away. Now SGA is one of the 5 best players in basketball. I'm just saying, and this isn't a knock to say that Paul George isn't a good player. He's not as good as SGA is.
Yeah, so that's what I'm concerned about with the Clippers, though. I feel like if it's not going great for them. I'm paranoid that they are going to do exactly that, though, because they are in a new stadium. They want to keep attracting people. So what do? Go make the big trade. Go swing for the fences and make a big trade. And I think if anything, that would make them better very short term. But I don't see a guy out there that they could trade for that would make me go, Clippers, championship contenders, book it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think they're in a tough spot. They're in a division where, like you said, I'm looking at the Lakers. I'm looking at the Kings. I certainly think, even though I'm not big on Phoenix, you're not big on Phoenix, but we think Phoenix is better than the Clippers. They're going to be better than the Clippers this year. And look, it's not a fact that the Clippers are going to be better than the Warriors. Like, we're just saying they're going to be better than the Warriors, but I don't know that the Warriors don't end up being better than the Clippers, because the Clippers lost a lot. They lost a lot, and they didn't come back and get younger. They brought back some veterans, but they brought back guys that are older than some of the veterans they already had. They actually got older. So I don't see how you get better by getting that much older.
No, that's absolutely fair. So, yeah, those are our 2 divisions. We'll move on to a new one next week. But don't worry. It ain't over, because we have another fun topic to talk about. So for anybody that doesn't know, ESPN came out with a list. Their 25 greatest players of the 21st century. And it is something. So for anybody that's listening, I'll read it off to you real quick. I'll read it off to you in order. They got LeBron James at 1. Then it's followed like this: Kobe Bryant, Steph Curry, Tim Duncan, Shaquille O'Neal, Kevin Garnett, Nikola Jokic, Dwayne Wade, Kevin Durant, Dirk Nowitzki, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Steve Nash, James Harden, Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, Kawhi Leonard, Manu Ginobili, Allen Iverson, Anthony Davis, Ray Allen, Tony Parker, Draymond Green, Russell Westbrook, Pau Gasol, and Luka Doncic. This list is questionable. I'm going to start off by saying that I think it's very questionable. I think there's some great names. I think they got a lot of names right, but I can honestly say I think they got some of these in the wrong order. And then
Yeah, the order might be off. And look, I don't know that a couple of you guys should even be in there at all. You're saying the top 25 players of the 21st century. I love Manu Ginobili. I don't know if he's one of the top players of the 21st century. I don't know that Draymond is one of the top players of the 21st century. Like, terrific complimentary player, but you on his like a lot of these guys on the list, you know what they have in common? A lot of these guys, Brett, they were the guy on their team. They were the guy. Draymond's never been the guy. Manu's never been the guy. I, I I value Tony Parker more than Manu, and I'm not sure Tony Parker should be there.
I was going to say I don't even like Tony Parker really being here. I
Yeah,
thought
I'm just saying, right?
like if I were to reorganize this list, like I think Manu and Tony Parker would be the last two on this list. They'd be 25 and 24. If I redid this list, they'd be completely off it. But if I were just to reorganize it, yeah, I'd already put Luca over both of them
Easily. I assume that Luka's there because he's maybe the newest guy or something like that. But if we're actually ranking them where we think they are as players, Luka's a lot further up. And the last three players, if we're not changing the list, it would be Tony Parker, Manu, and Draymond. Those would be the bottom three guys.
I will say I think I know why Luke is on there because I looked at Manu's what they wrote down for him to see why he was there, and they were counting his overseas and Olympic stuff.
There they go doing that again.
Yeah, so I'm just like, okay, so that Luca's already been phenomenal, and if you're already counting if you count his overseas stuff being the EuroLeague MVP at age 18 in the toughest league over there,
right?
Yeah, okay, Luca makes absolutely all the sense in the world. But yeah, that's the first thing I caught off guard. And then not only did you put Manu on there, you put him above some names. Like Manu over Allen Iverson is something.
I can't do that.
Manu over, and you can think what you want about Russell Westbrook, but he is an absolute dynamo offensive player. Is he a hard guy to build around? Absolutely. Is he a phenomenal basketball player? Also, absolutely. That's two things can be true. And I think Russell Westbrook on this one is getting a lot of hate.
I agree. I think Russ. I think if Russ is your best player, it's hard to build around him as your best player. But when he was playing with KD, you could tell there's a value there because even though KD was clearly the better player, Russ took so much pressure off of him. Like they played well off of each other. I know ultimately they didn't win anything together, but they actually played well off of each other. People forget, I believe, Brett, they went to, I want to say 4 conference championships, maybe 5, but they went to at least 4. And obviously they went to 1 NBA finals. So they did have a degree of success. They just didn't win it all. I think Russell Westbrook, too many people are looking at the Russell Westbrook I, and other fans have watched Brett the last, I want to say 4 or 5 seasons, and you forget about the dynamo that came out of UCLA and was a beast the first decade of his career.
No, absolutely. And that's the thing, and that's kind of why I'm questioning Tony Parker is someone like Russell Westbrook at least showed me that he could lead the team to the playoffs as the lone star and best player on the team. Someone like Tony Parker has never done that. And I don't want to hear anybody make the argument, well, Tony Parker has a finals MVP. That doesn't mean you're the best player on the team. I've seen that argument before, and it drives me up a wall.
It's a terrible argument because we love Andre Iguodala, but he was not the best player in the Warriors, and he has won 2. A lot of guys win finals MVPs, and they're not the best player on their team. Look, it's frustrating. I take nothing away from Manu because he was a great performer, maybe one of the best 6 men ever, no doubt about it. I think Draymond is one of the unique complementary players that I've ever seen. He might be the best complementary player I've ever seen. As much as I revere, respect Dennis Rodman, Draymond is a better, more well-rounded player than Dennis Rodman because Draymond, even though he's not a great shooter, he's an effective offensive player. Dennis did most of his damage defensively and what he did on the boards. Draymond is a better all-around player.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm kind of looking at the top of the list, and I'm all right with that. LeBron, Kobe, Steph, Tim.
No, I would have you can shovel that top five around, but I'm leaving LeBron where he is. I'm sure some people want to debate Kobe and Steph. I'm not doing that. I think Kobe's where he should be. I think Steph's good. Tim should always be in the top. If Tim Duncan's not your top five, something's wrong with you. Or at worst, he's 6, right? At worst, but
Yeah,
I don't mind that. I mean, Kevin Garnett is 6. I got no problem with that. Jokic right now, the Joker's 7, and I think that's a fair place to put him because obviously he's not done. He's not done. His career's not done. Look, when it's all said and done, I would have to assume Joker's going to probably launch himself into that top 5 when it's all said and done.
no, I absolutely agree. I was going to say, I saw some people hating on the Kobe spot. I think the only realistic argument that you can make over Kobe would be Tim Duncan. I think that's a valid argument that you can
That's
make.
it. The only person I'm putting over Kobe is Tim Duncan.
And personally, I'm huge on Tim Duncan. I'm not going to lie on the show. I would put Tim Duncan at 2, Kobe at 3, but at the end of the day, if you want to have Kobe at 2, that doesn't bother me at all because it's well deserved.
I just don't think so I think the top of the list is not crazy. I think they get it right.
I think once you get to the middle and towards the end, it starts to get a little wild.
It does. So a good example is they have Giannis 11. I don't think that's terrible because like Joker, I think when it's all said and done, because right now Joker and Giannis are still in their primes, they both will elevate. There's a real chance, and I'm serious, there's a real chance when it's all said and done, both of them are top 5. I don't think that's impossible. I think that's real. I think, maybe Shaq, maybe Garnett are in trouble because I can see Giannis and Joker elevating into that top 5.
Yeah, and it's funny with Giannis is there's a handful of players above him that I think that he's already over that might be controversial to some, but
if we're playing a game of horse, then Dirk and Durant are going to beat him in a game of horse. If we're talking about who are the better basketball player is, he's going to surpass both of them. I think he surpassed, and I'm a big D Wade fan, but what Giannis did the year they won it all, what he's done even when they haven't won it all, I think it speaks volume to what he is as a basketball player. So I'm not killing D Wade. I don't think it's an insult actually to have Giannis right behind Joker.
it's funny because that's exactly probably where I would have put him. I think he's.
Yeah.
I was going to say I think he's definitely better than Dirk, and I'm ironically I have a Dirk jersey in the.
You're a big Dirk fan too. Everybody
But-
listening, you don't realize how big a Dirk fan my partner is. He's a big Dirk guy.
But I would easily have him over Dirk. I'd have him over KD. I'd have him over Wade. And now I think both him and Jokic, I think both him and Jokic have a legitimate argument to be better than Garnett. It's close. I think Garnett's still over both of them, but I think they also both of them have that argument to be over him. So,
and I think they're going to catch him because here's where they're going to catch him, Brett. They both already have one title. He has one title, but statistically, they're going to blow by him as well, right? Like, now Joker's not going to make any all defensive teams, but he is going to probably be a top 5 scorer to go along with being a top 3 rebounder and assist guy. And Giannis is going to make all NBA team defense for another 3 or 4 years. He's going to surpass Garnett in that way, not to mention the fact that he can drop 30 in your head as well. This is taking nothing away from Kevin Garnett, who, by the way, I'm a huge KD fan or KG fan. The only time I wasn't a KG fan, obviously, and I'll be honest, is when he was with the Celtics because, I'm a Laker fan and we don't root for the Celtics. It's just what it is. But I love Kevin Garnett when he was with the T-Wolves. The only time I rooted against him, again, is when he played against my Lakers. But he's a phenomenal basketball player. And to say that at some point Jokic and Giannis would be ahead of him, I don't think that's an insult at all.
I always felt so bad for Kevin Garnett because he matched up so well in his prime against so many teams in the league. But the poor guy just kept running into the one team he didn't match up well against, which was the Lakers. And he would constantly lose. And it's just like, well, it's just unfortunate luck of the draw. If you want to win a title, you have to go through LA. And that's one team KG throughout his career always struggled against in his prime.
Look, let's be honest. When Shaq and Kobe were at the peak of their powers, that 3-year run, everybody in the West had to run through that. And I think KG's best team was the team that he had with Sam Cassell and Sprewell. That was his best team, his best chance. And I don't think that was enough.
Threw it all the way for Joe Smith. What a rough time to be a Timberwolves fan.
That's right. That's right. Was that when Kevin McHale did Danny Ainge a solid? He did him a solid.
Yeah, that's when they did that under the table deal with Joe Smith, lost all their picks, and then they ended up doing the deal for KG.
Right.
Oh, any Timberwolves fan out there, I'm sorry, I don't know how you lived through that. I'd have been heated.
That's tough.
I will say I love the respect that we're showing to Steve Nash. I know a lot of people would have had him much lower, and some people might not have even had him on the list, but I love the respect
top 25.
Oh yeah, it's at number 12.
No, what I'm saying is, I think Steve Nash is top 25 of this 21st century. Like, how do you not acknowledge a 2-time MVP within that time frame? How do you not acknowledge a guy that I know the Suns didn't win at all? I think they went to, did they make one conference final or two? One or two?
I think they made it to two.
At least two. And look, he had the same luck as KG had. He ran into the Spurs, and then he ran into the Lakers, Kobe and Gasol's Lakers. That's just the luck of the draw, man. That happens, and it's tough. But I think that Suns team, they were, in many ways, in my opinion, they were ahead of their time. That Suns team, they were built to play in this current NBA. They would have done great in this current NBA.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they would have. Spread pick and rolls with Nash and Stoudemire with that spaced out of a floor. Oh my goodness.
Right. Think about what they had. Stoudemire's playing the 5. Marion's playing the 4. Nobody could run with your 4 or your 5. Like that's what made them unique. Yes, they gave up some size, but nobody could keep up with them. And then when you did the pick and pop, if you dove down and respected the role, he's kicking it to Joe Johnson, or he's kicking it to Q Richardson, throwing it over to Raja. I mean, there's shooters all over the floor, and they were just picking people apart.
Yeah, I saying if anybody thinks that Steve Nash placement doesn't deserve, that man is arguably like the third or fourth best offensive engine on this list.
I agree.
And when I say offensive engine, I'm adding in playmaking, so that propels him. For me, that propels him ahead of names you think would be ahead of him. Like, I think Steve Nash is better at running an offense through him than someone like Kevin Durant is. Kevin Durant's a better shooter. Arguably, like, he can get a shot off easier because of his height, but he can't orchestrate and conduct an offense and get everybody else their shots and his own like Steve Nash can. So
look, I argue with people all the time about this, Brett. Shaq swears that Steve Nash stole an MVP from him. Then I have to remind people what Shaq's talking about. He's not talking about any time he was with the Lakers. Shaq's talking about his first season with the Heat, which most of us would call a great bounce back year. But I believe he averaged like 23 points and 10 rebounds. A good year. But that's not an MVP year compared to Nash having the Suns with the best record in the conference. I think the Heat were like 2 or 3 games. They won 2 or 3 games less than the Suns. I just thought Shaquille O'Neal giving you 23 and 10, that's a good year. That's not an MVP season. He didn't steal it from you. He earned that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's the thing with Steve Nash. When he got to his prime, no matter who you put around him, that man was always producing. Amari Stoudemire goes down, replacing with Boris Diaw and Lindsey Hunter. Second best offense in the league. Not an issue.
They were supposed to, when Amari went down that year, that's following MVP number one. Everybody's like, they're done. Stoudemire's out. They bring in DL. By the way, I'd seen DL in Atlanta. I thought, I've seen this guy. He's very unimpressive. DL gets into the roster, plays the 5, and DL has his best year. Steve Nash got DL paid. Nothing changed in their offense. Now, DL can't finish the way Stoudemire can, but he's a very clever finisher around the basket, and he's a much better passer. So, in many ways, the offense opened up even more.
Yeah, and he could shoot it from farther than Stoudemire.
Right.
If they were having like a shootout from like 15 feet, I'd give that to Stab. But once you started getting out to the 3-point line, that was easily Boris. Boris was always so funny to me because there are some players that don't play well on bad teams because they're not motivated.
Right.
And Boris was easily one of those players because he went from unimpressive to looking awesome with Phoenix. Then he goes to Charlotte and he looks terrible again. But then he goes to San Antonio and he looks awesome again. There's some players that just want to play in important games. They want to play in the big games. If you want to see a player like that now, look at Draymond Green. He's the same way. If you put him in an unimportant game that means nothing, he looks absolutely terrible because he doesn't seem to care. Put him into an important like postseason game, he looks great.
Agreed. I think Draymond elevates his game to the competition. Boris Diaw was certainly that way as well. Like, I remember him on Charlotte. He looked depressed. And he gets to the Spurs, and suddenly there goes this well-rounded player who does a little bit of everything really well. You need me to shoot a 3. You need me to create for somebody else, score in the post, play the 4, play the 5. He was a key cog in the Spurs' last championship, the last championship when they beat the Heat. Boris Diaw is one of the most underrated role players probably in the NBA history.
Yeah, those finals, he was absolutely just picking Miami apart, whether it was shooting, so they'd press up on him, but then his playmaking would start ripping them apart. So he was honestly like arguably my favorite player to watch from the beautiful game Spurs. Like there's so many options, but I just loved watching just the way he attacked and moved the ball. Shout out Timmy and his always fun back to the basket throwback post play.
Shout out to the big fundamental, one of my favorite players ever. Ever.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of the Rockets, I saw the report that they're willing to trade Jalen Green only for a superstar. And I don't know about you, Mo, but I think they're overthinking his trade value a little bit. I think he's a great player, but I also don't think that they're talking about like, oh, if a guy like Kevin Durant becomes available, I'm like, like I'm sure you would love to trade him for Kevin Durant, but that's just not his value.
You know what, though? Maybe they're showing him some love, some respect by saying we'd only trade him for a superstar because he is a young, talented player. I believe Jalen Green's still only, 21, 22, maybe.
Yeah.
Terrific scorer. And I think once he becomes more consistent as a shooter and as a playmaker, he might take the same kind of leap that SGA took. He has that kind of talent in him, and maybe Coach Udoka can bring that out in him, that consistency. If I'm the Rockets, the way the NBA is right now, I'm not trading him because I think he is a part of my future going forward. Like he's nowhere near as good as he'll be as long as he keeps putting the work in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he's in a great spot with Houston, with great coaching, with Coach Udoka. There was that rumor of him getting sent to the Nets, and I think that would have been absolutely terrible for him.
Yeah.
I not only that, I think another guy on the Rockets that's a great fit with them. I think they're having a great passer like Sangoon and Fred Van Fleet. They can help get him the ball in the right places and really help maximize his talent. I think if you send him to Brooklyn, it would just that team would almost look like we're watching a game of 2000s basketball. Jalen Green would revert back to kind of just a straight up shot chucking. And I think him and Cam Thomas would just sit there having a diet of like long twos.
I think Cam Thomas is going to be one of the top 5 or 6 scorers in the NBA next season. Now that doesn't mean the Nets are going to be good because they're not, but I think that, and I'm not talking about his shooting percentages. I'm literally just talking about just pure raw numbers. I think Cam Thomas is going to average between 25, 27 points a game.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think Cam Thomas is an amazing player, and he could be even better if he could just figure out how to balance his scoring and playmaking.
Right.
That would be awesome. I'd love to see him do that. And I remember seeing somebody make the argument to me one time. We were talking about Cam Thomas, and they were trying to flex on me, and they're like, "Well, his assist rates are low for a guard." I was like, "He doesn't pass. The only pass he makes is to the rim on a jump shot. He doesn't pass the ball."
No.
Like me saying Michael Porter Jr.'s assist rates are low. Of course they are. Of course he doesn't turn the ball over. So
Because Porter Jr. has one job: catch, shoot.
absolutely, they don't call him the possession ends here Porter for no reason.
Right. Speaking of which, let me ask you a question. Because I wanted to ask you this when I was away on vacation. I thought I'm gonna ask Brett because Brett could give me a great answer. When you look at the Nuggets, the fact that they never replaced what they lost from their bench the year after they won the championship, when in Jeff Green and Bruce Brown, and a guy that no one talks about because he's a talented player, but he still hasn't found his NBA home, Bones Highland, right? But those three combined for over 30 points a game for that bench, Brett. And what they did is they never replaced that. And now Calvin Booth had one job this offseason, Brett. He had one job: keep that core starting five together, and he couldn't do it. He lost KCP. I guess what I'm asking you is, when you look at the Nuggets as currently constructed, I believe they're not a title contender right now. I think they've come back to the pack. I get it. You've got Joker, you've got Murray, Gordon's there, Porter's there, but that's literally it. Christian Braun is pretty good, but he hasn't really elevated in terms of filling in the role of Bruce Brown. And they didn't add to their team. I know they're talking about bringing Russ in, and I like Russ, but the way the Nuggets play, I don't like Russ as part of their starting unit. And if they make him part of their starting unit, that is going to end very badly. If you want Russ to come in and be an energy guy and maybe run the show for the second unit, he could be productive that way. But I don't see him being in any closing lineup, because what KCP did is, it's not just that he was great on the ball defender, Brett. It was also that he provided spacing to Joker and Murray along with Porter. Russ doesn't do that for them. And I thought they had a real opportunity, but they lowballed when they were trying to pursue a deal to get Gary Trent Jr., because I thought Gary Trent Jr., Brett, would have been a perfect fill-in for KCP, right? Very similar skill set. They didn't do that. So I'm asking you, I know you might disagree. I'm not saying their championship window is closed, because we don't know what kind of moves they can make going forward. I'm talking about what they are right now today in terms of roster construction. I don't think they're a title contender right now.
So I'll give Calvin Booth credit for one move. I do like the Dario Saric signing. I think that was a great move.
Solid.
I mean, they needed a backup big that isn't whatever they're squeezing out of DeAndre Jordan at this point in his career. I thought that was great, but yeah, it's so tough with the Nuggets to say if they're a contender or not, because, well, let's face it, as long as they don't run into the Timberwolves, who's perfectly constructed to stop them, they do have Jokic, which alleviates a lot.
Absolutely.
However, I don't think that they win a title this year either. When it comes to Russ, I don't think he should touch the starting lineup with Jamal Murray. He should not run with Jokic.
Agreed.
We saw this last year. You want to look back in Nuggets history how this will go? Go back and watch when Allen Iverson teamed up with Carmelo Anthony.
That's a good call.
They completely played off Allen Iverson because he couldn't provide the adequate floor spacing playing off the ball. They knew all the value was with the ball in his hand. So when he didn't have it, they just ignored him. And AI didn't shoot well on catch and shoots.
That's a good call.
Now we're in 2024, and history could very well repeat itself. You want even more recent history? Go look at Russ with the Lakers. Same thing. They would just completely play off Russ.
I,
So
I he,
he's a guy that he could be a fine addition. However, you got to understand, and I think the Nuggets need to understand that Russ needs to be his own entity. Don't try to shoehorn him into a starting lineup. Don't sit there trying to make him some off ball player that he's not. Give him the bench unit when Jokic sits and then run that. I don't think the fit is seamless. I don't think he fits their offensive scheme at all.
agreed.
But the one bright side I will say with Russ is if he's willing to accept the dirty work, he could almost be like a supercharged like Bruce Brown with if you took away some of Bruce's 3-point shooting and gave it to finishing around the rim, he could do that. But I don't think he will. I think that this was a not a great signing. I
Desperate
don't think
signing.
what's up?
Desperate signing.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. It's just a desperate signing. So I don't see it either. The only thing that really saves them this year is if we get some massive leap from Porter Jr. and I don't see that happening either.
I don't either. I think what they're gonna. I said this to a friend when I was on vacation, but I believe this. I think what's going to happen if Denver's going to still stay in that championship window, they're going to at some point, Brett. They're going to have to make a decision between Porter Jr. and Aaron Gordon, but one of them's going to have to go because if you look at their salaries, they're almost trying to pay four guys max money. Aaron Gordon's a little bit lower than everybody else, but when you've already committed like $38 million a year to Porter, who by all measures, we can all pretty much agree he's not a 2, he's a 3 at best. At best. And Murray, remember, they're negotiating a deal with Murray right now. You know Murray's going to want a max deal. So now, when it's all said and done, Murray's going to make probably close to 200, a little bit over 200 million. They're actually going to be more strapped, and that's why I know at some point they're going to have to go. We got Murray, we got Joker. We can build around those two. They're going to have to do a mini rebuild because they're not going to be able to keep that core four together and field a title contender. There's no way.
And I think if you watch enough MPJ, you'll really understand the issue with MPJ is it's really simple. It's anything on the ball with him just hasn't developed. Like he looks awesome when he's playing with Jokic and Jokic is setting him up and he can just catch and shoot. But if you watch him try to create anything for himself on the ball, any type of self-creation juice, it's not there. And at this point, I'm not even sure if it'll ever be there. And that's almost why that if it came down to the two, I'd keep Aaron Gordon. It's tough, but I would keep Aaron Gordon. I think his defense that he provides is immensely valuable. And I think that would be harder to replace than Porter Jr.'s 3-point shooting.
And what makes Aaron Gordon unique is he, in many ways, he has the skill set of a 3, but he's the way he's built, Brett, he's physically big enough and strong enough to guard 4s. Like he's very unique in that he can guard 3s and 4s. And look, I get it. He's not a great shooter, but he is an effective mid-range shooter. He's a terrific at running around the baseline, cutting back door. The one thing I like about Gordon is he's never stagnant. He's constantly in motion, and you wish early in his career somebody would have taught Russ to do the same thing. I'm hoping as a basketball fan that Russ can be effective for them as a spot player. That maybe he runs the second unit like you suggested. Maybe you put him in there with somebody with a crazy high basketball IQ like Saric, and maybe those two develop some kind of chemistry along with Christian Braun, and they stabilize that second unit. I don't want Russell Westbrook taking open threes. I really don't. Not unless it's a shot clock situation. He has no choice. But if we're early in the shot clock, I don't care if he's wide open or not. I'd rather him take 5 dribbles inside the 3-point line or attack the rim. But to me, when he's shooting threes, it's a wasted possession.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a lot of people are thinking that I saw a lot of people say, well, Russell Westbrook, that's a bad replacement for KCP. I want to point out that he's not a KCP replacement. He's a Reggie Jackson replacement.
Exactly.
Christian
Exactly.
Brown is the KCP replacement in the starting lineup. It's
Right.
not Russ. Russ is brought in to replace Reggie Jackson.
Facts.
So
The
I
real
saw that.
question is Christian Braun going to be able to shoot it consistently enough to provide the spacing that KCP did? Because as an athlete, Christian Braun's actually a better athlete than KCP, and I would argue that he's almost as good a defender, and maybe he'll become an even better defender. What they need from a good year from Christian Braun as a starter, 10 or 11 points a game, shoots a high percentage from three, and he plays lockdown defense. If they can get him to be a consistent 3-point shooter, then they don't have to change anything in what they do in the starting lineup. That's going to be so key to them. I just think that we're on the same page, whereas they've lost so much. They're going to be relevant. You pointed out the reason. They've got Joker. You're going to be relevant. You're going to be a playoff team. And maybe, Brett, it could come down to matchups. Maybe they don't play Minnesota. Maybe Minnesota plays somebody else. Somebody else upsets Minnesota, and then Denver gets a favorable matchup, and it just works in their favor. If that is something like that were to happen, then yes, that would open up the doors. But I'm looking at them strictly from top to bottom, starting five, bench, and then I'm looking at the competition around them. I think right now they've come back to the pack, and they're just not a title contender.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Like I said, counting out the Nuggets will always be tough as long as number 15's in town.
Look, I feel the same way about Joker as I feel about Giannis. If Giannis is healthy, you don't count Milwaukee out. Now, you might say it's more difficult for them, but because of him that they're relevant and they're in the title hunt. I think Joker's the same way. Maybe Joker proves me wrong, and he has an even better year than he had last year. I've seen him do an interview, Brett. He said he's still haunted by what happened in every game they lost to Minnesota. Like, I think 2 of them or 3 of them were blowouts. He's haunted by that. And I think he said he's going to put in the work, and he wants to, I guess, right that wrong. Easier said than done, because I think Minnesota's walking around like they might think they're the beast in the West right now.
That's terrifying to think that he's going to try to come back even better than the last 3 years.
I love that, though. I mean, here's the question, though. What if he is better, but let's say Giannis has an MVP caliber year and the Bucks have a better record? It's going to be difficult to separate the two of them because their statistics, they're very close. Joker's going to have more assists. Their rebounds are going to be similar. Their points per game are going to be similar. But then Giannis you kind of give him extra points because of what he does defensively. It's very interesting. And obviously, we can't forget the Embiid factor. Embiid's always going to be an MVP candidate as long as he's around. Not to mention Luka. Luka's an MVP candidate, obviously, as well.
And shout out to my Bucks. He won the Gary Trent sweepstakes. That caught me off guard, but I was so happy to see it.
Brett, when you guys got Gary Trent, as soon as I saw that deal go through, I was like, well, that's it for Denver. I'm not, and Nuggets fans, I'm not saying you're not going to compete in the playoffs. I just think Gary Trent would have been it would have been a seamless transition with his skill set into what you guys do. He's very similar to KCP, maybe not quite the defender, but he's a better scorer and just as good a shooter. And Milwaukee pulled off what I think is one of the steals of free agency. I think Gary Trent is going to have an immediate impact on Milwaukee.
The part that got me excited, that I didn't even notice this until I started doing the deep dive research. Gary Trent is going to get a lot of wide open threes.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Mo,
sir.
Do you want to take a guess on what he shot last year on wide open threes?
I'm going to say over 40%.
51% on wide open threes last year.
Good night. Whew.
So, as long as he doesn't forget how to shoot, I don't expect him to shoot 51% from 3 on wide open threes again. But even if he sits there in the 40s, I will be absolutely ecstatic. He knows how to play the passing lanes, force some turnovers, get Giannis running in transition. I'm not going to say get the Bucks running because Giannis is the only one that can run at this
Right.
point.
He's kind of running by himself.
Say it's either Giannis or like Brook Lopez randomly appears out of nowhere with like a transition three.
You know what though? I do think Gary Trent will help speed them up, and obviously the addition of the young man we were talking about. I don't know if he gets into the rotation in the first half of the season, but I predict that he will get minutes in the second half, and I mean meaningful minutes in the second, because they're gonna, when you have somebody that has that kind of burst and that kind of potential, you're gonna put him in the game and see if he can impact the game.
And I think we're going to get a much better Damian Lillard this year. This is a guy, once again, last year he got traded just before training camp. He admitted he didn't work out last year. He was going through the divorce. He was out of shape, in his own words and in Doc's words. And you kind of saw it towards the end of the year how good he started playing once he started to round into shape. You know, before he unfortunately had that strained, I think it was a strained soleus, kind of like Giannis and Porzingis had, or a strained Achilles.
Right.
He went into the playoffs looking better than ever and proceeded to drop 35 and a half.
I think Dame is going to be on a mission. I do. I think that he thinks that a lot of people doubted him because of how things finished up last year. So I think I want him to be on a mission, but I want him to be, if this makes any sense, Brett, I want him to play under control. Be on a mission, but remember it's an 82 game season, Dame, and they don't need you. They need you, but more importantly, they need you going into the playoffs healthy.
Yeah, I hope him and Giannis kind of take turns and just keep the wear and tear off each other. Just do your best to take turns running the offense and keep the load off each other and, you know, keep each other fresh for the playoffs. That was the only unfortunate part about last season and how it ended. It's if we would have lost with Giannis and Dame healthy, I'd have been like, all right, whatever. But like them getting hurt right before the playoffs, you know, it left a bad taste in my mouth. So I'm going to be absolutely looking for revenge this year. And I already calling it. I have no doubt who I want to see in the first round. I want the Indiana Pacers.
How come I knew you were going to say that? Listen, How come I knew you were going to say that?
The two teams I would love to see in the playoffs. Give me the Pacers. Give me the Heat.
Oh,
okay. I want to avenge both of those losses. That would be like my dream. My dream playoffs for the Bucks would be beat the Heat, beat the Pacers, beat the Celtics, and then, you know, obviously win the finals. That would be my dream playoff run for the Bucks.
all I gotta say is, look, if you shoot 40% on catch and shoot open shots, that's amazing. The fact that I'm still hung on that 51%. And again, I'm with you. It's doubtful he shoots 51% again, but what if he shoots 47%? That's so insane, man. Like that kind of shooting around a Giannis and around a Dame, that opens up the floor for everybody.
No, absolutely. So I'm definitely looking forward to next season. But that's all the topics that I had. Mo, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, it just felt really, really good chopping up basketball with my partner again. Here's the beauty of the N1 podcast. Brett comes out, we've got topics to talk about, and when we're done with the topics, we end up riffing about hoops anyway because we both are hoop addicts. So we appreciate everybody coming out, listen to the N1 podcast. Hey, make sure, guys, you check out all the great content we have at the Wire to Wire Network. Make sure you check out the N1 Discord, the N1 Facebook page. We are growing, guys. We are growing as a network. We are growing as a podcast, and we're growing because of your shares, your likes, your follows, your friends becoming our friends. We appreciate you.
And I'm working on it. I'm taking a little too long for my liking, but hope soon we're going to have some And1 merch. I'm also working on an And1 website. I'll announce all that when it's done, but it is a work in progress. So keep your eyes out for that. Like I said, I appreciate every single one of you that tuned in, every single one of you guys that listened. Thank you. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for tuning in to the And1 podcast. If you like our content, you can find more on the Wire to Wire Podcast Network on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Want more And1? Find it on Wire to Wire, like and share our Facebook page, and join the And One Discord. Grab the link to join from our Facebook. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful day.